Is how do we create a new way of being, a new culture here where just by living we do good. We don't have to like fight everything in the culture, because right now in order to really do good in the world is to really fight everything. My family and I started this project when we were teachers and found that we really we loved working with the young people, but we found the system of teaching just so spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally violent to both children and teachers, and really to their families too. So we ultimately quit doing that, and then ended up in a 200 square foot cabin at a friend's house. And so in moving into that, we had to radically transform the amount of stuff that we had in our life, and it was really our first soiree into radical simplicity, and that was a beautiful, such a freeing thing to just let go of almost everything we had. After being there for 2.5 years, we went to a number of really amazing places, 2 of which totally changed our lives. One of them was a natural building homestead and learning center called House Alive in Oregon. And then another was an amazing intentional community called the Possibility Alliance in Missouri. And so we lived at both of those places for about half a year each, and then after living in those places realized that they had given us the vision that we wanted, and we came back home to Reno, and that's when we started this project. And so this project is based on Ghandian Integral Nonviolence, which or at least our interpretation of that. Basically what that means is finding the roots of love in ourselves and nourishing those, and finding the roots of hate in ourselves and finding ways to weed those out and work slowly at weeding that. And that sounds really basic, but on so it's a spiritual and like inner work practice, but it's also a daily life practice. And Gandhi was very adamant about that your daily life be your fullest expression of your religion, essentially, of what you believe is most important. And so we've created for the project a daily life that actively fosters roots of love. So I love gardening, I love being connected with plants, and building with our hands, and spending time with our children. All of those things, singing, talking, discussing and reading good books, and all of that, being in community with people, all of that fosters love in our lives. And so we spend a lot of time doing that. And then it also looks like withdrawing support from violent systems. That is part of the nurturing of hate that we all participate in our society, really unconsciously, and not meaning to hate other people, but essentially creating massive poverty, destruction, horrible, like essentially enslavement all around the world, so that we can do things like drive our cars, use computers, or what are the other thousands of things we do that create. So we don't use electricity, because that's one way that we withdraw support completely from, not only from the creation of electricity, which we all know to be a very environmentally devastating activity, but it also is a running away from consumerism in general, and the having lights on. It's a fact fascinating thing, but having lights on and the ability to use computers has a tremendous impact on how, like, an increased level of consumption. And, like, for example, our family of 4, now that we use no electricity and we don't have a car, really almost entirely based on those 2 things, we live on about between $6,000 and $7,000 a year, the 4 of us, which in this country seems like crazy. How does anybody do that? But it's possible. And we do it in large part because we don't use electricity, period. And it reduces our consumption. So that's one thing, that kind of withdrawing support from those systems of violence. And consumerism is a system of violence.
So how does that reduce your consumption? Because you don't buy blender because
right.
you can't use it, and you don't buy a. Is that mostly what you mean?
You know, if you want to know the truth, I don't know how it works.
Okay.
All I know is that the things that are available to us are free in wild abundance, are like singing together. It's free.
Yeah, you're not buying CDs of other people singing.
Right.
Okay.
The thing that, like reading a book, the library, my favorite institution in the entire country, is free. Mm-hmm. And so books and ideas are free, and conversation is free, and
certainly a car takes a lot of money, just the maintenance and
a car,
and
a computer. Like a computer is a fascinating thing because first of all, it just is an addiction. It just draws you in such a powerful way. And because there are some interesting tidbits of information that come from it, we feel like we're actually getting something of value from it. And that like justifies our utter addiction. And that then also everything's at your fingertips with no connection to how it's made, or to where it comes from, or the gas it's used to get to you, or any of the intensity of the consumption that's caused by that simple click,
and it arrives at your door magically.
And it arrives at the door magically.
Okay, see that REC? That means it's recording. So.
It's recording you!
Is that okay?
Yeah!
And then we can play it back. I can show you if you want later, maybe. You want to show me the bunnies?
If you really...
Oh. So cute. So you eat the bunnies?
Yeah, once they grow up.
Uh-huh. Do they taste good?
Our goal is to grow more and more of our own food and to be able to preserve it. And here's an appropriate technology that's, I don't know, how old do you think it is? Probably as old as humans.
Yes.
Gathering.
10,000 years.
It'll be about 70 square feet maybe. And we'll keep potatoes and onions and carrots.
And what will be on top?
I haven't figured that out yet, so sure roof. But it'll be made out of earth bags and straw bales and earth plaster.
Okay, like a structure, so you can walk inside.
We'll do that. Harvesting the clay and then moving it down the block to a friend's place so we can do a workshop on a natural building. So
like something like this
building,
that, which is made out of?
It's made out of earth, sand, clay, some straw. There's a bunch of salvaged 2x4s and 2x6s and whatever I could scrap together. But the whole thing is covered in earth, and it's a wonderful structure.
What are the more gratifying things that you've been able to do for yourself and your family?
More gratifying. Living without electricity is wonderful and so joyful and pleasant and lovely. That's just been one of the greatest things we do. it gets us much more in tune with the seasons and with light and dark and winter. And you know, the winter we sleep a lot, and our kids sleep a lot, and it's great. It's so great. Yeah, and then when the seasons change, when it starts to warm up, I'm ready to go outside and do more things. Like I want to chop wood, I want to build stuff, I want to plant and garden, and it feels wonderful. I highly recommend it. But because we don't job, or very little, I think I was thinking about this yesterday, I think I work for money, or I job for money about maybe 10 hours a month. And Katie's probably about the same. And sometimes there's little spikes here and there, but that's, it's not a whole lot as things go. And because we keep our expenses down, we're able to do that. And so what that does, it gives us a lot of free time. It gives us free time to build things like this beautiful structure here, which I just love. And it's, we're still building it because we just take our time with things. It gives us time to do service in the neighborhood, grow seedlings and give them to neighbors so they can start gardens, to do murals, to reduce graffiti, to teach workshops, to organize things so we can have great teachers come to town and share what they know. And then we get to take the class too. So it's incredible. We get to do these things because we're not tied down to a 9-to-5 job, or we don't choose to be tied down to that. So people ask, well, what about retirement? Or what about health insurance? Or what about this? And what about college? And to each of those I have an answer, but it's what do you want to do with your life? So it's an incredibly rewarding lifestyle, and it's easy on the planet.
Yeah.
And it's joyful, and it's fun. And so
it doesn't feel like a should, not having electricity.
Oh my gosh.
Most people would think you're depriving yourself.
Oh, it's so wonderful. I love it. It's a choice. It's a great
freeing.
Choice. It's very freeing. And I have no electricity bill.
Yeah.
So I don't have to work to pay for my electric bill, which I don't support power companies and what they do anyway.
Yeah.
And the hierarchies they create with wealth and income and things like that. So it's all it bundles together, but it's all wrapped up in love.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm white. I was raised to a male. I was raised to a upper middle class family that was educated, that had careers and jobs, and I wanted for nothing as a child, really. I myself went to college and grad school and have done career stuff, and pretty bright and do well in the world, as my wife as well, and we could be very well-to-do financially if we chose that route, but one of the things we try to do with our lives is we create contexts, or we create these forms or containers that support us in how we really want to live. So we've chosen to live on very little money, maybe about $7,000 a year for our family of 4. We've chosen this kind of artificial poverty, and I say artificial because it's self-imposed, and by any kind of demographic data, I could be very wealthy in terms of cash. But we keep our income low, so it compels us to find other solutions, to be more creative. So if I need a piece of wood, I don't run up to the hardware store to Home Depot and buy a lumber. I look around for it, or I talk to my neighbors, or I save things. If I want to if I want to get somewhere, if I want to travel, I'm not going to just buy a plane ticket and jet around because I don't have the money. So I've created that container and supporting our values. And then so maybe I'll look for a ride share, or I'll carpool, or and so on and so forth. So the other thing we do around that is creating those contexts is we don't allow electricity into our house. They finally took the meter off of our house, which is really funny. But we don't have it there. It's not like we just have an electricity-free night or something, or electricity-free week where there's light switches that work everywhere. Because if I did that, every day I'd be battling
Right.
that switch. Closet. This morning, actually, I went into my dark closet, and I kind of went over to the side with my hand.
Wow,
and
such an
reached-
old habit.
Yeah, I reached for a light switch, and I was like, just laughed at myself. But we've created this context where it doesn't come in, so we get creative in how to solve our lighting problems. And part of that is going to bed early. Part of that is making beeswax candles, which are beautiful, and this all supports our values. So a beeswax candle, for example, we have a need for lighting. Everybody has a need for lighting at some point. And so we fulfill that need through candles. And now we buy local beeswax from farmers that we know, and we make the beeswax on our own wood stove, that while we're making beeswax, we're heating our house, cooking our food, drying our vegetables, drying our clothes, providing ambiance, heating our hot water. And we're getting candles out of it, and it's nice work. It's good work with our hands, and yeah, it's wonderful. So that's example of creating those containers. So like poverty, voluntary poverty or artificial poverty, no electricity. We don't own a car, so if we don't own a car, we're not going to use a car. So we use bikes, and we use the bus, and we walk, and my kids bike, and so it's healthy.
You organize your life differently.
Yeah, it's healthy. It's slow. It's less impact, environmental impact. We get to see the city in a totally different way. We get to see people and talk to people as we
Hear the birds.
Hear the birds as we bike around. Yeah, it's wonderful. And also, we don't run around as much. And it's if it's raining or it's cold, we'll stay inside. We won't run around. So everything slows down, and it's really nice. And with the car, we do use a car sometimes. But again, we have to ask somebody to use it. And so we make connections that way. Say, hey, would you mind if I borrowed your car to a neighbor or a friend? And sure. And then we're just building this network every time. And so when we have some jam or something, we'll bring them some jam. Thanks for let us use the car. Oh, this is wonderful. Or we share eggs or share pork or rabbit. Yeah, by creating those containers, it just leads to so many other things that improve our quality of life and improve our neighbors' quality of life and our friends' quality of life, and it spirals upwards.
Rather than giving your energy to the energy company that's in Cincinnati or whatever, you're giving it to your people right in your world. Yeah,
a lot of what we do is try to focus on small scale, local, neighborhood scale work and relationships and projects and so
real
on and so
relationships
forth.
too.
Yeah,
rather than just writing a check.
Absolutely, yeah, because I can write a check. Gosh, we have a telephone, we have a landline, which is our one high technology in our house, and that's kind of a funny thing by itself because people try to text us quite a bit on the phone.
That happens to me too.
Yeah, but anyway, so it hurts me every time to write that check to AT&T because I know I don't support their practices, but I haven't figured that out yet. And one day we probably won't even have a phone, but we're not there yet. And in the meantime, I'm really happy to have it. It's a great miraculous service. E.F. Schumacher back in the 70s in the book Small is Beautiful first coined that term. So what's an appropriate technology? Now it varies with context, but building out of the earth that's underneath our feet and the sand that's in the desert 15 minutes up the road, this type of building is an appropriate technology. Yeah. Where we live, there's abundant sun. There's so much sun. So how do we use passive solar? How do we use solar wall heaters? How do we dehydrate our food instead of canning it? On and on and on. How do we heat water using the sun? It's all here. It's all here. We just need to be a little more creative. How do we orient our houses so they face the sun and get the benefits of that? A bicycle, another appropriate technology. It's low impact. It can be made. It's human scale. It has multiple benefits and not a lot of drawbacks. Yeah. And so solar, the passive solar is easy because it's abundant. It's free. And you can throw together a solar dehydrator in 3 hours.
So this is very interesting.
So this is just a wall heater, solar wall heater, and it's just a box with an old window on it, and then some old dark roofing, metal roofing, and the sun hits this
really
in the winter. Yeah, the sun hits this in the winter, and the greenhouse effect happens, and so the light hits the metal, heats up inside, and rises. And so on the inside, I made a shelf out of it down here on the bottom. It takes cool air coming in this way, and the air goes into the box outside, gets heated, and hot air comes out. It's
so you can
super
just
simple.
Feel. And the solar cooker, yeah.
Yeah, so this is something we bought. I've made these before, but they've never been as good as this. And we use this almost every day. We have a great deal of our meals year round in this. And it's just a greenhouse effect. It gets up to 350 degrees regularly. And so maybe it takes us a little longer to have our rice and beans or whatever, but who cares? You just gotta plan a little bit.
So it's the reflecting surface, the black to hold, to
and then
create more heat, and then the glass to trap it.
Yep. It's just a little greenhouse effect.
Yeah.
It's funny the greenhouse effect is a wonderful
Yes,
tool.
Here, not up there.
Well, it's what keeps us warm also.
That's true. We need some of it.
It gets out of
appropriate,
control.
right? The appropriate time and
right.
place. Yeah. All right.
Anything that I spend actual cash on, any money that I spend, I don't have any actual feedback to know that the purchase of that is actually that it's a moral act, that it's within my heart to do that.
There's no way to know.
There's no way to know because there's no connection to that thing. There's this artificial thing that happens with the money. When we use the gift economy, and just in general, when we use the things that are within our bioregion and within our known spheres of people, then the loop gets closed up tight, because then we have direct feedback. Like, is that actually a moral thing to take this, to use this, to take it from you? It's an incredibly powerful thing to close those loops. And it helps me live in much greater alignment with my own heart, which feels good. And the basic notion of the gift economy is that you work on first of all, finding the things that are your gift to give, both in a personal and spiritual sense, but also in a material sense. What are the things that you have to give and that are truly a gift, not that you give because you'll get a paycheck, but that you give because it's in you to give. And so that in and of itself is an awesome thing to do, because
it's a gift.
It's a gift and it feels so good to give. So we do that. We spend a lot of time looking and thinking in that area and experimenting, like giving this and then realize, that felt like a burden. That didn't feel like a gift, So we do that, and then we also, how do I want to say this? We also practice the art of receiving, which is
hard for some people.
It's really hard. It's actually, in my opinion, the harder piece. Especially when there are times in life when you have to receive more than you can give. And it just happens that those fluxes and flows like that. And so, especially in our culture where it's like, you gotta be, independent, and you're supposed to take care of yourself and your own and all that. If you don't do that, then what a failure, And so being willing to receive joyfully the abundance of the universe through other people and know that you won't ever pay them back. It's really hard to do. It's really hard to do. And it's one of the most powerful things to give other people, because people always want to give, so there's always that piece. So there's several pieces. One is the reduction of desire to actual need, so that the gifts you receive are actually what you need, instead of just an opulent lifestyle, which we're so comfortable with, you know? And so really reducing lifestyle needs is a huge aspect of the gift economy that most people don't actually talk all that much about. And then in more concrete terms of how things come into us and how we give things, there's a lot of things that we give away at our project. We give all of our workshops and all of our tours and field trips and anything, basically anytime people come here, all of our food, all of that, we give everything freely. That doesn't mean that they're free, of course. What it means is that we feel that that it's ours to give, that, you know, that it's in us to give. We give it, and then we assume that in the course of our lives, those things will come back. Not those things, but abundance will come back to us so that we can continue to give. And so sometimes that abundance comes in the form of, sometimes people will give money at workshops. And sometimes people will give our, you know, labor, come here. And sometimes people don't give anything directly to us, but end up paying it forward to other people. Or sometimes their gift is just coming to understand their own gift. And that's a really beautiful thing too. And so we maybe never see it in concrete terms in our hands and on our property in our lives, but it's more of an energetic love that gets created.
That's a lot of trust that you have.
Yeah.
Created.
Yeah. And, you know, to be honest, the gift economy works, I think, works a lot better when there's a group of people doing it, because then all of the things that we might actually need can get taken care of by each other in community, rather than having to find ways to get cash so that we can enter the money economy in order to receive things that we might need. But the gift economy doesn't exist here. So do we wait? No, we can't wait. You know, can't wait for all of it to show up and then partake.
Someone else to create it.
Right.
You have to create it.
We've created it, and we live, and that. So we don't get all of our needs met inside of the gift economy. We still. Oh, there's a hawk. You see it?
Uh-huh.
There's a pair that lives in our.
Oh.
See, they're getting ready for their spring baby.
Oh.
They're nesting up. They live right over there.
Wow.
Oh gosh, sorry.
It's okay.
They live over there. So we do still do a tiny bit. I work probably about a day a month. Kyle works 3 nights a month. And between those 4 days of work a month, we cover all of our monetary needs. And so we're doing pretty dang good, like in terms of like
Amazing.
the amount of what we're, I mean, we just receive. It's so, it makes me feel proud to be human, actually, sometimes, because people just want to give, and there's so rare of opportunities in our society to really freely give and know that it'll be loved and appreciated, and by being willing recipients and by modeling giving freely, we've just created in this tiny little way that hopefully will grow. Well, I just know that it will. I'm not even worried about that. But that in that small beginning, that there's already a huge abundance in our lives and in the lives of people that we touch, you know, that come here and give us stuff. Just sort of funny, but true.
So much that people can do, even in small spaces, even in apartments as renters. There was a showing of that movie No Impact Man. It's about this guy in New York City who lives in an apartment 9 floors up, he and his family, and his goal was to have 0 impact. I don't know that that's possible, but so they stopped using electricity almost entirely. They started composting with worms inside the apartment. They started washing clothes by hand. They started seriously reducing what they purchased. They started to bike everywhere and walk and on and on and on. So for every person, it's going to be different.
What we are facing today inside of climate change and inside of this environmental catastrophe that we are finding ourselves in is that it is not about finding small solutions inside of the big stream or river of mainstream culture. It's really pulling back and saying, this culture does not serve us. It is bankrupt. And as much as we wish that we had a culture that was not bankrupt, we live inside of one that is. Even when we want to do good, we end up doing really horrible acts of destruction. Dorothy Day says, has a great quote about, how does she say it? She wants to create a culture where it's easier to be good. And that's like what we're looking at too, is how do we create a new way of being, a new culture here where just by living we do good. It's important to us that it be a cultural transformation rather than just individual acts of small, like creating rules for ourselves. We feel drawn, for example, to not drive a car because of the extraction, the manufacture, the transportation of just the actual physical car, then let alone its use, and then its disposal. So all of these things, and then of course the huge amount of asphalt that we're laying across everywhere so that we can drive these beasts, and so that we can get from one place to another and rush around and be stressed out. And we feel like it creates a context for all of the things that really don't work in our society, like being separated from our home, from our families, from the places that we mostly don't even know where we live anymore. We just don't know our place. And the car really contributes to that. And so we've created the context where we don't have to fight that. We just don't own a car. And so there's a number of things that causes. One, we slow way down. We don't rush around to every event. We don't get overstretched because we don't want to ride our bikes there. It's too far, we're just too tired, Not in a bad way, but in that kind of satisfying, I don't need that. That's beyond my need. And then, so the context is set for us not to use gas and oil, which are...
It's freeing.
Yeah. And they're two of the most destructive products in our country, in our society as a whole world. I mean, they're war-creating things.
But if we have solar collectors on every roof, then you won't be using oil. So right. That would be fine. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And one is take a look at the solar collector itself and the consumption that is required in order to make that and transport it and maintain it and dispose of it as it ages. That stuff is mined off the bottom of oceans. And do we want mining off the bottom of oceans so that we can drive around? I would rather have a beautiful ocean and healthy ocean ecosystem myself. Two is like what I said, is like a running away from the destructive and hateful systems, but also running to something more beautiful. And slowing down is one of the most beautiful acts that we can, in this society, do for ourselves.
It's a revolutionary act.
It's a revolutionary act. It really is.